Welcome, everybody, to the latest live edition, of course, of the Ultimate Cleveland Guardian Show, part of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show family. Along with Zach Meisel, I'm Adam the Bull, and we got a lot to get to on today's show. The Guardians have lost 5 in a row. That is a season high, and that's got to end right now, Zach, because they got a huge series this weekend. And if things go the wrong way, if the Twins sweep this series, they will be in first place. It's hard to believe.
It's pretty crazy. That lead was 9 games
Yeah.
a few weeks back, but it's not now. But that 5-game losing streak they're on could be a distant memory if they just take care of business at Target Field.
And I, of course, have COVID. I know some people know that. Fortunately, none of you and Zach cannot get COVID through the screen. So that's good. But my house has been a den of COVIDness for a few days. I'm on the mend. But anyway, we don't even know who the starting pitcher is. You were just saying to me 4 hours from now, roughly, the Guardians play the first of a doubleheader. We know Alex Cobb is going to make his Guardians debut in Game 2. Who could possibly start Game 1? We'll get into all of that coming up. Plus, we'll answer your questions and read your comments on the Ultimate Cleveland Guardian Show. All right, Zach, let's start with, before we get to this series, let's go back to what we've seen this week. And it's been ugly. The Guardians, as I mentioned, have lost 5 in a row. And, they've given up a ton of runs in these 5 losses. They gave up 7 to Baltimore, 9, then 7 to Arizona, 7 and 5. So the pitching, which has, been really good, especially the bullpen, though, has given up 35 runs. The offense hasn't been terrible, although only 3 runs in the last 2 games against Arizona. But the pitching has been really bad for the last week.
It's the first time this season where it's not just, hey, it's that one easy thing, like the offense had an outage for a week, or the rotation, which has been a mess for most of the season. It's a little bit of everything right now. And that's why it's a 5-game losing streak, and yet it's not like, a lot of like 5-3 losses that I feel like sometimes those just happen, and it's difficult to analyze those because you just didn't get the big hit, or if Scott Barlow gives up a couple runs because Cade Smith and Hunter Gaddis were unavailable, like a lot of things that it's hard to, usually a 5-game losing streak, you want to come in here and rant and rave and yell and scream, and you can do those things that they can make up for that and ease everyone's minds in a few hours. But it's just a bad stretch of baseball, and it also comes on the heels of a 5-game winning streak, which was maybe their most impressive baseball of the season. So it's a weird stretch, but it does reinforce, again, the root of a lot of the issues. And we can talk about the offense, the lineup, because I think there's some things there that they could fix on their own. But the starting pitching it's affecting other things. One, you're falling behind every game. That puts some pressure on the offense. It felt like the Diamondbacks were up 2-0 in the first or second inning of all 3 games in that series.
Yeah.
And then we've seen it's not just overusing your really good relievers, but it's getting to a point where to win a game, you need all of those guys because you're turning to them in the 4th inning. So to get to the 9th inning, to get to Class A, you have to use Cade Smith and Hunter Gaddis and Tim Herrin. And what that's doing is it's making it so that in a game where it's 2-2, or even you're down a run, you can't use those guys because you'd love to keep the score close, but you already use those guys every time you win a game.
Right.
So then you have to go to Sandlin, who's had a really big rough patch here. You have to go to Barlow, who's struggled lately. You have to go to Avila. Like it's not ideal. And if you could just get 5 or 6 innings from your starting pitchers most nights, this wouldn't be an issue.
And we've talked about it all year, that eventually the lack of depth of the starting pitching, the lack of innings from the starting pitching would eventually catch up with the bullpen. And it has. Even though the best guys in the pen, Cade Smith had that bad performance the other day, and Hunter Gaddis has given up a couple of runs here lately. But it's not even really about, as you say, those guys. It's the other guys in the pen, those guys who aren't as good. And those guys generally pitched pretty well early in the season, and all those guys have kind of come back to earth, and they are all struggling now. And so now you don't have whereas early in the season it felt like everybody in the pen was pitching well. Well, now it's only a few guys that are pitching well, so you have to go to those other guys, as you say. And some of those, so now earlier in the season, even when you went to those guys, you stayed in the game. But now those guys are not keeping you in the game. Neither are the starters for the most part. Bybee hasn't pitched. It's a combination of a lot of different problems all catching up with each other. And the Guardians now 16-21 in their last 37 games. Now, I don't know if that's, they've been hot and cold within that stretch, so maybe it's not fair to lump it all as one stretch. But they are 5 games under 500 in the last 6 weeks.
I think the main thing is they've just been very inconsistent.
Yeah.
And that's going to happen when you don't get good starting pitching. We shouldn't compare anything to the 22-game winning streak because that was historic. But the one thing that I can never get over about that streak is that every single night they got 7 innings from their starting pitcher who gave up a run or two.
Right.
And I'm not expecting that here, but it just shows you if you want to play consistently good baseball, that's what you need. That's the number one ingredient.
Yeah.
And they haven't had that at all. And it's been especially touch and go lately. And now, if Alex Cobb, I have no idea what to expect tonight from him. They're very hopeful Tanner Bybee will start Sunday. So it could trend in the right direction, and they need it to, because you can't expect the bullpen to be perfect all season anyway. They've created this unfair standard for themselves because they've been so good. But at some point, Cade Smith's going to blow a game. At some point, Gaddis is going to come in with a 2-run lead and leave down a run. At some point, Clase is probably going to blow a save.
Yeah.
So it would help if you could just get the starting pitching. And so if you get 6 innings from Cobb tonight, you can go to Herrin, Gaddis, and Clase, and then tomorrow you can use those guys, and then Sunday maybe you still have Cade Smith left over. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to use all those guys every time you win, but that's what they've had to do lately.
Yeah, no doubt. It's been a major issue, and getting better starting pitching will help. And yes, as you say, you can't expect. And guys, and Cade Smith and Hunter Gaddis have no track record before this year. It's not like they have long track records of great pitching. They've been amazing, both of them. But you're going to see some cracks at some point. Every reliever has a bad stretch, and it's a concern. In terms of who may start the first game of this doubleheader, it'll be Bailey Ober for Minnesota. We know Alex Cobb's going to pitch the second game. As you said, they're hoping Bybee can be back Sunday. Could they possibly? I can't remember the last time that McKenzie pitched. Now, wouldn't he be? I mean, is he a possibility?
So there's two options. It's McKenzie and it's Joey Cantillo.
Okay,
Cantillo was scheduled to start today for Columbus. McKenzie tomorrow. Now, it just so happens that Columbus is in St. Paul this week.
Oh, that's convenient.
So whoever they need has a 30-minute drive over. My hunch would say Cantillo, but it's just a hunch. I could get word during this podcast. Maybe we could break some news or something. But it's going to be interesting. And whoever it is will be the 27th guy too. So
right,
because you can add a starter. They'll have to make a roster move to get Alex Cobb on the roster on the menu.
Right.
Gavin Williams goes tomorrow. There's a lot of moving parts here because then Matthew Boyd should come back during the Cubs series. He looked outstanding earlier this week for Columbus, where I think he retired the first 17 batters he faced. So a lot of things in motion, but the bottom line is we've known, Bull, we've been talking about it since April.
Yeah.
They needed to address the rotation. And their decision was to go with Boyd and Cobb. Yeah. So what we'll see in a few days is their idea of the best version of this rotation. Right. And there's no excuses after that.
And they're going to have to kick somebody off the 40-man roster because Cobb's on the 60-day IL.
Yeah, they'll have to do that with Cobb, and they'll have to do that with Boyd. So, I think people were surprised, myself included, that Xavier Curry was designated for assignment earlier
Yeah.
this week. But that's, if it wasn't earlier this week, it was going to be today for Cobb or in a few days for Boyd. So, a lot of decisions to make
Yep.
and not a ton of depth.
You think what's his name? Anthony Goes will be going. I know they just called him up. What do they think of him? I know he's an older guy. He was a hitter.
I mean, he's got good stuff.
Yeah.
Like, he throws upper 90s and he's got a wipeout slider. Command has always been an issue for him.
Yeah.
Incredible story. Just making it to the majors as an outfielder, spending like 5 years in the majors, going back to A-ball to learn how to pitch, flaming out with the Tigers, with the Rangers, coming to Cleveland, making it up to the majors, pitching in Cleveland's bullpen for a little while, then blowing out his elbow, having to rehab, come back again. It's an incredible story. And yeah, I mean, I like Sam Hentges is also getting ready to return this weekend. So it might be short-lived.
By the way, if you look at him real quick in a picture, he looks a little like Michael Brantley, doesn't he?
He's like Michael Brantley if he was a villain in a movie. I mean, he is. It's the funniest thing because his teammates will all say he's the greatest teammate ever. And you will see him spending time talking to the last guy on the roster. He must have talked to Tyler Zuber, who was a non-roster pitcher with them in spring training, for days all spring, and just speaking about his experiences and lending advice. And with the media, he's the scariest guy. He will stare right through you.
Oh, really?
It's terrifying. You ask him a question, he answers it. It's like 4 or 5 words, and then he just maintains that eye contact and doesn't look away. And you feel like you have to ask another question to break the awkward silence.
I wonder if he had a bad experience somewhere along the line, but I don't know. It's like nobody's
Detroit, yeah.
Okay,
but still, I mean, he's terrifying.
Okay, man.
But I've always thought he could be a good pitcher. I mean, he's got good stuff.
So you're not writing him off. You're not going to be like these people who won't vote for Albert Bell for the Hall of Fame because they scare you.
That's Albert Bell deserved the 95 MVP.
Yeah.
And if he didn't have hip issues late in his career, could have played a couple more years, he would have been an interesting Hall of Fame case.
Yeah. But I think writers sometimes, all of us sometimes, let our personal feelings about players get in the way of that sometimes. It's not that players don't do the same. Whenever players get a chance to vote for things, they're worse.
Terrible.
I mean, look at the top 100 players in the NFL. Look at some of the Hall of Famers that the baseball players have put in baseball. I was a big Harold Baines fan, but on no planet is Harold Baines a Hall of Famer. Hell of a player. Hell of a player.
We don't get everything right, but there was a year that Rafael Palmeiro won a Gold Glove at first base, and he played like 30 games there, and he DH'd the rest of the season.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, there was some former player who turned curmudgeon, who was just railing on the baseball writers. These guys shouldn't vote for anything. Rafael Palmeiro got a Gold Glove. Hey, bud, it was the coaches throughout the league who vote for Gold Glove. We've never voted for the Gold Glove. So yeah, I mean, there's no perfect system. I remember one year the NBA, it got leaked like who the players had voted for the All-Star game.
Yeah.
And there were a bunch of votes for like guys who had missed the entire season.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Things like that. So
well, and by the way, Gold Glove voting, the sidebar, has gotten much better. Are the coaches still doing it, or is it?
Yeah, it's like a combination, though. It's
okay because it's better. Like it used to be, you had to be a good hitter to win a Gold Glove, and that's not the case anymore.
Yeah, they use like certain percentage of it is actually some of the advanced metrics.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. All right, Zach, let's get into this. We're going to get into the series more. We're going to take comments and questions from the fans, but first, folks, let me tell you, if you are thinking about going to a game in Minnesota, I know somebody who actually had tickets and they had to come back to Cleveland because there was something wrong with their house, unfortunately, with all the craziness that came through. But if you're thinking about getting last-second tickets for baseball or really anything, Check out the Game Time app. The Game Time app gives you the best prices on the tickets, including last minute. Save up to 60% off buying last minutes for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and a whole lot more. So now is the time to take advantage. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKED ON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Speaking of which, Zach, are you how's your house? Everything okay at your house with those crazy storms that came through?
Yeah, we're okay. We lost power for about 24 hours, but
Oh, okay.
how about you?
Right
Didn't it tornado like rolled right by you, didn't it?
Yeah, and I didn't take it seriously at first because I'm like, real tornadoes don't hit. It's not like Kansas or even Southern Ohio, but it was pretty serious. And we did go down to the basement. There was a very sizable tree. I'll have to text. Did I text you the picture or no?
No, I only saw Jason's.
What's that?
Well,
Jason's situation.
Jason's been sending pictures of it. He's like,
oh my God,
posting it everywhere he can.
I know. His house got hit. There was a big tree right behind my back fence that fell, hit a house. If it had fallen in a different direction, it could have hit my house. And it damaged a house, like one behind and one over from me. This huge trunk of the tree was out of the ground. It was wild. And but fortunately, we were okay. We didn't lose power at my house. Very lucky there. But I know there's still thousands and thousands of people without power. As of yesterday, there were about 400,000 homes, I believe, or businesses without power. And that's sucks. So hopefully everybody's safe. I know just driving around the area, there's like so many lights still out. It was scary, but hopefully everybody's all right. On a much lighter note, let's see what the fans have to say. Let's see. Chutu says the Guards need to get back on track. We're in a 5-game skid, but when you watch the last month, we just don't look very complete. It's baseball. Yeah, that's true. Listen, it is up and down. I brought up that they've lost they're 16 and 21 in the last 37, but everybody, even the best teams, are going to have a stretch like that. Usually, it's very rare, even for a team that wins 100 or 110, even that you still won't have a couple of weeks where you don't play well. And they've been up and down within this 37 games, and because they got off to such a great start, they've been able to survive it. Now, things get very dicey if you don't win this series against Minnesota. I mean, you think about the situation they're in here. You're up 3.5 on Minnie. You're up 4 on Kansas City. By the way, Kansas City, they have the second best run differential in the American League behind only the Yankees?
I think they're kind of scary.
Yeah.
I mean, Bobby Witt is doing everything he can to join Aaron Judge in that MVP race. Their starting pitching's been fantastic.
Yep.
They added a couple relievers at the deadline, so that they're not they're a formidable threat. They're not some juggernaut. They have significant holes in their roster, but like they've proven they're not going away.
No, not at all. And they while the Guardians will play the Twins, the Royals have the Cardinals. I think they started a series yesterday. Yeah.
And then the Royals come to Minnesota. So there's a lot
weird
can happen
series
in the
for the
next week.
Royals. The Royals Twin series is Friday, Saturday. They're not playing Sunday. That's weird. And then they go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to Minnesota. But they have Cincinnati and the Angels after that, which is very favorable to them. But then obviously the Royals and the Guardians will play 7 games between August 26th and September 4th, which will be huge too. Hey, the Guardians are going to have to take care of business in these games, like in general. But when they play these division foes, you could, when it comes to just the Twins, the Guardians by the end of this series could either be in second place. I mean, they could be tied for second, or they could have a 7.5 game lead over the Twins if they sweep. So anything can happen here, but they've got to right the ship in a hurry. And when you don't even know for sure who 2 of the 4 starters are going to be in the series, it kind of makes you a little nervous. And well, especially because, and then one of the 2 you do know hasn't pitched all year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean The American League is so strange. The Guardians still have the best record in the American League. Did you know
Yeah.
that? That's nuts. Um, it's percentage points over the Orioles and Yankees, but I
Yeah.
think more than anything, it shows you how condensed everything is.
Oh, yeah.
Um, the Royals are the number 3 wild card,
Yes.
and they're only 4 games behind the Guardians, who have the best record in the American League. So one bad week could take you from the number 1 seed, a first round bye, home field advantage,
Yeah.
to out of the playoffs.
Yeah.
So it's important that they respond here. They just give themselves some breathing room. The one thing is, if they just would have won a couple more games this past week, you could have come into Minnesota, and even if you lost 3 of 4, it's not the end of
Yeah.
the world. Now, I mean, the Twins have to be salivating, and they didn't take care of business against your Cubs either. But,
No.
this is a golden opportunity for them. I think if you would have told them back a month ago when they were 9 games out that coming into this series, they'd have a chance if they swept to tie or take the lead in the
Yeah.
division, they would have signed up for that. So
No doubt.
we'll see.
Mr. Woodle says giving up those home runs to Josh Bell was infuriating. But hell, all the Diamondbacks were making good contact on our pitchers. That's true.
That team is on fire.
Yeah.
It's not an excuse to get swept in your own park, but they've been the hottest team in baseball.
Man, I'll tell you what, I know they weren't going to trade him, but you could have had him, I think, this offseason. For a team like the Guardians that struggles against right-handed pitching, would Jock Peterson have been a great fit for the Guardians? I mean, he kills right-handed pitching.
I feel like he's been linked to them for a decade.
Yeah.
But it brings up a good point. I mean, they've kind of flip-flopped here where, Lane Thomas and Jhonkensy Noel and David Fry have made them pretty capable against left-handed pitching, but they're missing a bat or two against righties. And Lane Thomas, just for whatever reason, he crushes lefties. He just has not hit righties well at all this year or last year. And David Fry has really struggled, I mean, overall, but especially against righties for the last couple months, to the point where I don't know what Kyle Manzardo is doing in AAA. I don't know what else George Valera needs to prove down there, even just if it's just against right-handed pitching. I think he'd be a good fit. They need to do what they can to have the most efficient roster, and their lineup against righties, especially, just that's, you either have Angel Martinez or Lane Thomas hitting second. It's just, it doesn't work.
Fans are frustrated right now, Zach. It feels like that the Guardians didn't go all in. Now, they didn't sit on their hands. We know that. They made moves at the deadline, but it felt like they could have done more. And then when they didn't, when they decided, hey, we once again don't want to trade any of our top prospects, the names you've heard about forever. Well, but we don't want to bring them up to play either.
Yeah.
So I don't understand what Kyle Manzardo has nothing left to prove. You mentioned Valera. Like, these guys are top prospects. They've been. Get them up here. We have guys that are just not hitting. And they seem to be too often content with having a bunch of defensive first players in the lineup. And in big series and big games, especially in the playoffs, that's not going to be good enough.
Defensive versatility is wonderful, but it can't come at the expense of hitting. You need offense. And you've got Rocchio, great defender at shortstop, not hitting at all. You've got Schneemann, not a great defender at shortstop, can hit a right-handed fastball. You've got Angel Martinez, who has adapted pretty well to center field, but the offense has taken a nosedive over the last few weeks. And you've got Tyler Freeman, who was your center fielder, but Angel Martinez has taken some of those reps, and now he's kind of a utility guy, and he hasn't hit at all this season. So that's 4 players who can play either shortstop or infield and center field.
Yeah.
And I don't know that any of them can hit, and you don't need all 4. So there's no reason why you can't send one to AAA and call up someone who's actually hitting, because it's August 9th and you shouldn't be thinking playoffs yet, but let's just say you're heading into the playoffs. Is this the lineup you really want to carry into a series against Corbin Burns and or Garrett Cole or the Mariners rotation? Like, whoever it is, you need more hitters you can rely on. This is not a playoff caliber lineup at the moment. Like, half of it is, and then half of it is not. So you can't just call up Kyle Manzardo on September 30th and assume that he's going to be able to impact your lineup in the playoffs. You need to give these guys some runway. And that's why I think, it's past due for at least one move to help boost this offense.
There's no doubt about it. And I know, those guys could come up and struggle as well. You never know. But you've got to take that chance, especially with somebody of the pedigree of Kyle Manzardo. And you think about it, I was thinking about the teams that the Guardians could play, right? Minnesota, their rotation is completely right-handed.
Yeah, you're getting 4 righties this weekend.
Right. Seattle, their rotation, completely right-handed. They have no lefties in their starting rotation. Kansas City, if you play them, okay, they have one lefty in Cole Reagans. That's it. The Yankees have 2 lefties in Nestor Cortez and Rodon. But I don't think Cortez is going to pitch in the playoffs. I think in the playoffs they'll have Heel, Cole, Rodon, and Clark Schmidt, who pitched really well and is about to come off the IL. So you got one lefty there, and then who am I forgetting? Oh, Houston. Houston's got Framber Valdez and Kikuchi. Okay, they got some lefties. And then, of course, Baltimore, whose only lefty is Trevor Rogers, who I guess would be I guess it depends how healthy their rotation is.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the starters you're going to face in the playoffs are going to be righties, more than half. So you have to have some good options against right-handers. So we need to know now, can Manzardo and Valera get it done? Remember, I brought the example up, and Kyle Manzardo was not the prospect that Jackson Holliday is, but Jackson Holliday came up early in the season. He was up for 3 weeks. He was terrible. They sent him back down for a while. He's come back up. He's hit, I think, 4 home runs now this week back, or 8 days, whatever it is. He's playing well. And there's nothing wrong with that. And now's the time, especially Manzardo. Let's go. I mean, why is it that they haven't done it? What's your gut tell you?
I mean, this is how they treat position player prospects, I think. I don't know.
But how they've done it has not really worked.
Well, there's that. There are too many days where the lineup has, Andres Jimenez, we've talked about, has not been up to. He's been hitting better lately. His hitting streak was at 11, 12 games. But I don't want to discount that, but it's a lot of singles. It's a lot of 1 for 3, 1 for 4 with a single. The OPS is still too low. The slugging percentage is microscopic. And a lot of days you have him hitting 6th. You have like Tyler Freeman 7th, Rocchio 8th, and maybe Hedges 9th. And that's a tough way to go. Yeah. It's hurt them that David Fry hasn't been able to catch much because of the sore elbow, because they had so much flexibility with that early in the season. And when Bo Naylor was struggling, they could catch Fry a lot more.
He's been a huge disappointment this year, Naylor. I thought he was having a big offensive year, and he's been terrible.
Yeah, and I don't. You can live with him hitting 9th because he's still a home run threat.
Right, sure.
And he's been good defensively. And that's not. I mean, I agree with you. I expected a lot more from him at the plate, but it's compounded by the fact that all those guys hitting 6th, 7th, and 8th just don't offer much.
No. Yeah, they were getting more production, a little more earlier in the season. And now it's gone away. David Fry, has not been the same player since June. That's been a big part of it too. And so there's not enough consistency in that lineup. And it's time to, when the trade deadline happened, we were all saying, let's get him up. They're still not doing it. All right, Zach, any final thoughts? How are you feeling about this weekend? Are you saying it's going to be Cantillo? Is that your prediction?
That'd be my guess. I can't remember a time where I didn't know the starting pitcher 3.5 hours before first pitch.
Weird.
Very strange. I don't know. You know, I this team has been so resilient. They've bounced back every time that we've expected the wheels to fall off.
Yep.
You know, at the same time, like the Twins are tough, and you're going into their building for 4 games. The Guardians are already 5-0 against them this season. It's hard to imagine them being like 8-1 or 9-0 against them. But I don't know. I guess I just feel like there's a weird vibe around this team where they like people assuming that they're gonna fail. And I do think, you know, even though the first game, like Cantillo would not be their first choice or McKenzie or whoever it is, but I do think they'd feel like if they could pick 3 starters, I guess Ben Lively would probably be one. But if, you know, Cobb, Williams, and Bybee is who they're going to be leaning on quite a bit the next 2 months. So it's not the worst way to set up. You're going to miss Joe Ryan. You're going to miss Pablo Lopez. So I don't know. I think it'll probably be a split, and we'll have nothing to talk about on Monday.
Yeah.
But
If it's not, if they lose this series, will it be panic time?
Oh yeah, I think so. I think because of just the landscape of the American League, there's no margin for error, and you could go from sitting pretty for 4 months to in major trouble.
Yeah. Well, they had margin for error about 6 weeks ago. Now they have no more. I mean, that's it. And their schedule doesn't get easier. I mean, they're, you know, you look at who they're playing. I mean, they're not playing a lot of poor teams the rest of the way. So it's going to be challenging.
They get Grady Sizemore and the White Sox in 1 month.
Isn't that crazy?
It's going to be a long month till then.
But, I mean, look at that. You know, they play the Cubs between now and then, and the Pirates. Those teams aren't great, but they're not terrible. The White Sox are the only terrible team, and, you know, the Reds aren't very good. But that's it. They don't play the Reds till late. The rest of it is all really good teams. All right, folks. Making some noise outside my house. I think it's a perfect time to end. Everybody be well, feel well. Zach, have fun in Minnesota. Bring home some wins. It's up to you. It's your responsibility to bring home the wins.
I don't know if I can bring home wins. I can bring home a Maurice filet. Feel better.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you all on Monday right here on the Ultimate Cleveland Guardian Show.